Welcome to SCL, the Subject, Composition and Light Photography Podcast. Hi and welcome to SCL, the Subject, Composition and Light Photography Podcast. My name's Rob from robnonphoto.com and this is my podcast all about learning about photography and basically I'm a beginner amateur photographer. I have my website www.robnonphoto.com, my blog, where I try new things, new techniques, and try and share those things with everybody else, so people can learn and enjoy their photography and maybe get a little bit better too. The format of the show is normally me talking a little bit about what I've been doing in the previous week, and then a featured subject, which this week is going to be about slowing down in photography by using a tripod and using manual mode, and even thinking about one-shot photography as well. Okay, but what have I been doing? You'll have to forgive me, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter podcast because my daughter's back from Spain for a few days, and so I'm squeezing this in between her going out to the shops. So I'll be missing out on some of the regular features, but don't worry, they'll be back again next week. And I haven't done loads of research this week either, so I'm sort of doing this almost on the fly. It also might mean that the regular notes that I normally put up on robnonphoto.com might not be up for a couple of days. I normally put them up at the same time as the podcast, but what I'm going to have to do today is probably upload the podcast to iTunes, and then I don't know when I'm getting the notes finished. It might be over the next couple of days, just to update that as well. A quick reminder that we've got the Flickr groups. Just go to Flickr and search the groups for Rob Non Photo, where there's a forum sort of discussion, there's a photo pool, there's some assignments and a technique challenge going on over there as well. So please come along, join and have some fun with your photography. Right, so what have I been doing in the last or so? First things, I submitted my pictures to our Flickr group, the time assignment, and these were motion blur studies really, where I was trying to capture the idea of passing time sort of thing, by using a longer shutter speed to get motion blur in vehicles that were passing me by. Ideally I wanted to do this at night, but as I explained in the previous podcast, I couldn't really, because I've got kids, and the evenings are time for me and my wife, and the mornings it's all about looking after the kids and things. They go out and play with their friends. So I took them during the day, and that's quite challenging to try and get motion blur of vehicles during the day, especially if you're just walking around normal roads and not motorways, because the traffic's not moving that fast. So the way that I had to do it was I set my camera up on a tripod. I used the smallest aperture I could, so that's f13.6 I think on my Fujifilm S5700. So by doing that, the shutter speed would have to get longer anyway. Obviously I was doing this in aperture priority mode. And then what I also did was I put my polarizing filter on, not to enhance the sky or boost the colours or anything, but purely because a polarizing filter cuts out some of the light, so that would make the shutter speed even longer. I also used my grey grad filter, but what I did was I slid it down so it was just the grey bit covering the lens, so that would make the shutter speed even longer. And finally I made sure my ISO was at the lowest setting, so way down 64. And to be honest, that gave me enough leg room to really play around with it. And what I found was that it's more difficult than I thought it would be, because the differences between using a 25th of a second and a second, and then say a 2-second exposure, was the traffic would just disappear, and you just have these these trails going along. But the problem was, because it was during the day and the vehicles didn't have their lights on, you didn't get that great effect of like a floating red or white light above the road. So a bit disappointing, but I'm glad I did it, because now I've got a much better idea of what to do the next time I go out. Maybe over a motorway, or I think really I want to do it on a road with a bit of a curve on, because I've got an idea for like a long 4-second shot on a road with an S-bend in it. And the idea would be to try and capture a car as it enters the S-bend all the way till it leaves the S-bend, so you just have these headlamps showing up above the road, or the tail lights, because I've seen that in a magazine a while ago and I thought it looked really, really cool. So daytime motion blur photographs, a bit of a mixed bag to be honest, but you know, it's all about getting out there and shooting, and then you just become better that way. I went on a quick photo walk to one of my sort of favourite locations for photography, Priddy's Hard, just round the back of where I live, in Gosport in Hampshire in the UK. Really with the idea of trying to take some lens flare pictures, because on the Fujifilm S5700 S700 Flickr group there's challenges sort of every month or every few weeks, and one of the current ones was lens flare, and I thought, oh, it's a sunny day, I can go and get some lens flare pictures. I was a little bit nervous about, I didn't want to be pointing my camera at the sun, to be honest. I don't know what prolonged exposure to the sun would do to your sensor, but I would think it wouldn't be very good. So with all the shots, what I was trying to do was hide the sun behind a branch and then move the camera slightly so part of the sun would show through to give you the lens flare effect. I tried to use unusual angles, which I had to, because the sun was fairly high in the sky. I would have been much better doing it a lot earlier in the day when the sun was fairly low and shining through the tree shots, for example. But the other thing I did as well was I put my Coke-in star filter on the front of my camera, so that's, if you see any of the those lens flare shots on my Flickr photo stream, you'll see they've got that star effect, and that was quite nice. I hadn't really used it before, so that was pretty cool. Because I've sort of been busy during the day a lot, I did also manage to get in a quick visit to Leon Solent as well, one of the local beaches. And Leon Solent has the potential to have brilliant sunrises. If you look at my Flickr sunsets. If you look at my Flickr photo stream, quite far back, you'll probably find quite a few sunset shots with these fantastic reds and yellows and golds and deep blue colours in these sunsets. And there was one night, sort of last week, when we were in the garden, I looked out, and the sky had a bit of a red glow, and I thought, oh, wicked, it's going to be a fantastic sunset. So I, grabbed my camera, jumped in the car, and went down to the beach. But it wasn't. The problem was, along the horizon where the sun was sitting, there was these big black clouds, and they were hiding the sun and blocking out most of the effect. But there were some nice high clouds right above, and so normally I'm quite rigid in my use of the rule of third. My horizon's on a third, and it's all very, I find it difficult to break away sometimes. But what I did with those was, with this set, and there's a nice picture in particular, I think I just called it wide angle, where I flicked the Fuji into portrait mode on the tripod, went right out to the wide angle and then tipped it up quite a lot so the horizon's almost at the bottom of the frame, and managed to get this rather nice cloud picture. But as I said, because the sun was hidden in colour, it didn't look very good. There wasn't much tonal difference between sort of the horizon and the sky. It wasn't anything special, so I gave it a bit of a black and white treatment in Photoshop. I also went for a one of those little I don't know, what do you call it, abstract shot of the sea. Sometimes I think they were a bit cheeky, that sort of shot where it's just the sea, and I gave it a black and white treatment. But I don't know, it's kind of mesmerising when you look at it for a minute or so. I don't know, kind of calming. I'm not sure. My sort of, the jury's out on that one. I think whether that's just whether it's art with a capital F, or whether it's any good doing shots like that. But it's definitely intriguing. Try it, and it sort of ties in with the technique challenge we've got over on the Flickr group at the moment, which is the idea of taking landscapes without any horizon in them. And when you start doing that, your pictures almost always start to become almost abstract, because they're taken away from the context of your standard sky, land, subject landscape or photography in general, to where you really enables you to like focus on a particular subject without the distractions of clouds and things. So yeah, interesting. The other thing you might notice on rob9photo.com is that there's quite a few like tutorials and which camera to buy and what accessories to buy and things like that starting to appear. These sort of articles that I might have covered a little bit before, but I was thinking the other day about the format of the blog, and you know, I love WordPress as a content management system for the blog. If you're ever thinking about doing a blog, you know, go with WordPress. It's really easy to use. But the problem I have with it is I'm very used to, on my other websites, having a very structured form of website, like a pyramid. So you go to the beginning and there'll be a home page and it will say, one of the other ones I do is all about consumer electronics sort of thing, among other things. But you know, so it'll have like GPS sat nav, car stereos, Apple iPods, you know, on the front page, and then you click on, say, the Apple iPod link, and that'll take you through to, you know, iPod Video, iPod Nano, iPod Touch sort of thing. So it's like a pyramid going down. So when you join the home page, everything else you can find it. And I miss that really, because there's some things that I don't want to be in the blog format. I don't want them to disappear off the home page, you know, after a few days after I've been posting some more. So one of the things I wanted to do was have a particular area of the site that's dedicated to tutorials about photography, everything from taking photographs to editing them. And so if you go to the site now and you look in the bar at the top underneath the main picture, there's an extra page called the course. And so what I'll be doing on that page is all these sort of tutorials that I'm writing, and maybe some of the ones I've done before, I'll be pulling them into sort of one page where they'll be in like chronological order in terms of what you would do in what order. So the first one's about choosing the camera, then about the accessories, then there'll be one about composition, then there'll be one about photo walks, etc. So you can pick and choose, you know, which level you want to go in. You know, if you've already got your camera, don't do that one, but you might well be interested in one on composition, or one on basic editing using Photoshop Elements, something like that. So that's the idea of having that particular resource in the site where it's really easy to find. And what I'll be doing over the next few weeks is going through my list and writing these articles. And what I'm trying to do as well is search the web for other great articles about things like composition or tips and tricks and videos, and bringing them into that area. So if you've got any advice about websites that you've come across that have really taught you things that you didn't know, please email me at scalespeeder@gmail.com, and I'll put them in some of the articles as sort of further reading. Another thing that happened this week is a chap called Michael sent me a picture. Well, he didn't send me a picture. He just got a new camera, and Fujifilm S8000, sorry. And he emailed me and said, you know, do you want to have a look at some of my pickies and tell me what you think? And I went over to his Flickr account and had a look around, some really nice ones. There was one, however, that was a nice idea. It was a macro shot of some rocks on a white background. But I immediately sort of thought, what a great idea, what a great subject, but it needs a bit more punch. It needs a little bit of Photoshop Elements sort of magic doing to it. And I asked him whether it would be okay if I could work on it and use it as a tutorial on the site, and he said, yeah, go for it. And so that's what I did. So if you look at that blog post, you'll see we start off with this picture of these rocks on a white background that's got a bit of a blue colour cast, and we make that white and we add more contrast to the picture. And the idea with that is that if you've got any photos that you've taken and you think, I'm not sure where I should go next in terms of editing it, by all means drop me an email, attach the picture to it. Full resolution is best, but it doesn't really matter if it's one on your Flickr photo stream. I can just pull that off, and I'll have a go, and I'll show you, the direction you might want to go, or we could explore different directions as well. And that's sort of the photo workbench. I did, as part of pulling together the idea of these extra articles for the photography course, I wanted one about the reason behind doing photo walks. So at the weekend I went down to, I think it was Saturday, I went to Stokes Bay fairly early in the morning, for me. It was about 7:30 after I dropped my missus off at work, and I haven't included the video in that particular blog post because I'm going to include it in a separate article. But I didn't have much time, but it was amazing, even at 7:30 in the morning, how the light was still really good. It hadn't gone too harsh yet in the hot sun, and the sky was still really nice and blue. And I got quite a nice shot of some jet contrails sort of going into the distance and converging. So I thought they were two nice leading lines going through. And again, it was another one of those wide-angle ones where I tipped the camera up even further and got the horizon. I mean, I could have got rid of the horizon altogether, to be honest, because there was no interest really in the water or on the Isle of Wight. But again, it was another shot where the colour version was a little bit bland sort of thing, and so I went for a black and white and a sepia toned treatment to that, and I think it came out quite well. I've pushed it a bit far. If you look at the larger versions, you can see that there's loads of noise creeping in sort of around the horizon in some of the areas where I've punched too much contrast into the picture. But it was really nice, and I'm, over the last week I've been really loath to go out in the middle of the day and take photographs, because I know it's so hard to try and get decent landscape shots. It's okay if you're taking just shots of the land without the sky, but if the sky's involved, it blows out and the land looks too dark, or vice versa, and then the shadows are really harsh. And so yeah, it's definitely, I'd say, if there's one thing you're going to change about your photography to make it 10 times better, take your landscapes either first thing in the morning or last thing at night, and you'll end up with pictures that your camera can handle a lot better, and they'll look a lot better that way. Right, so the feature I wanted to talk about today is about slowing down your photography workflow when you're outside. And the thinking behind this is that, if we want to improve our pictures by improving the composition of the pictures, how they're laid out, then one of the things we have to do is have a really good look at what we're taking a picture of, and really ask ourselves, is the subject really strong in this image? What composition am I going to use? What's the light like? And what I've started to do is, when I get into an area, say when I went to Stoke Spade the other day, I must have walked around for about 15 minutes just looking with my camera still in its backpack, not taking any pictures, because I had a rough idea of what I wanted to get an image of. But I just thought, right, I'm just going to walk around and I'm going to have a look before I get my camera out, because I'm very guilty of, I get my camera out, I'll click away and I'll move on, click away and I move on. And what that means is, when I get home, I do have lots of photographs to go through, and 99% of them are rubbish, and I throw them away. But by slowing, I've noticed when I've slowed down and thought about it a lot more, I still get the nice captures, but I get a lot less of the rubbish, so it speeds me up in terms of workflow when I get home. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is have a look round when you're going on a photo walk or visiting a place next time, before you take any pictures. Look for the subjects. Look to see, is there a nice, right, rule of thirds, okay, I see that, that horizon, but look for the lines, that road that's crossing, or that path, or that shadow that's shining across. And always remember that when you're doing a photo walk, where you're not sure you're going to take a picture of, one of the sort of good things to do is take your wide shots first. So say you were you're visiting, say, I don't know, a stately home or a castle or something like that. Walk around the outside and take your wide angles, your panoramas, and then move in closer and start taking your detail shots, and then get even closer and start taking your macro shots of details on the walls, in the windows, etc. And when you're taking your shots, what I've started to do as well is, when I'm working on a tripod, which I try and do all the time now, is that physically slows me down in the fact that I've got to set it up. But what I'll do is, because I've got it on the tripod, it's like, well, while I'm here, I'm going to try a longer exposure by using a really small aperture to see what effect that has. I'm going to try, a wide aperture to reduce the depth of field to see what effect that has on the picture. And when it's on the tripod, I think, well, okay, I've lined that up as the rule of thirds. Let's bend those rules a bit. Let's flick the camera up. Let's flick the camera down. Let's virtually collapse the tripod and take it from really low. Let's flick the camera on its side and take a diagonal, shot like that. The obvious one to start off with is when you take a landscape, flick it over and take a portrait, and vice versa. And another thing I've started to do a lot more is after I've taken the shots, I make sure that I review them using the LCD screen or the viewfinder, but then I zoom in as well so that I can see that they're sharp and they haven't got a bit soft. And the other thing you can do, say if you've got one of the Fujis, is flick it to black and white mode and take a couple of black and white shots as well to see how they come out. And then when you've sort of taken a picture of a particular area within your photo walk, have a sit down, look at your camera, review the pictures you've done, think, maybe I could have done that better, go back and redo it. Or maybe it will give you some ideas for the next shots you want to take. Maybe you haven't taken a nice macro, or you haven't taken a nice low down shot, something like that, to give you a few more ideas. Because one of the shots I took at the Stokes Bay shoot was of some they're not stepping stones, they're concrete blocks in a pond, and it's quite a I tipped the camera down so it's an abstract really, and I converted it to black and white. But what I should have done, I realised afterwards when I got home, was why on earth, while I was there, didn't I chuck a couple of pebbles in, so I could have got these lovely curved ripples going across past these pebbles, but past these stones. But I didn't, and I thought, but that's because I was rushing. I was thinking, I need to get back from my breakfast. So that's an example of where I could have maybe got a really cool shot if I'd taken a bit more time and reviewed my pictures as well. The other idea as well is the idea of one-shot photography. And one argument you sometimes hear on forums and in podcasts is that digital's fantastic because you can take thousands of shots virtually for free. But the problem with that is that you do end up taking thousands of shots, and it gives you loads of rubbish. And with the old days of film, if you wanted a great shot, you really had to think about it first before you pulled the shutter, because you've only got 36 exposures on a roll of film. If you're on a photo walk where you want to take lots of pictures of different things, you've really got to get it right first time. So that means really thinking about the exposure. Instead of using auto bracketing to make sure you get the exposure right, think, do I need to use spot bracketing on this particular shot to work out the photometry, how bright the picture is going to be? Should I use area? Do I need to go to manual mode so I can really control the exposure myself? When you're looking through the viewfinder, hunting around the edges of the viewfinder, thinking, right, is there a nice frame around this picture? Is there any distractions coming in, things that I don't want in the picture? Do I need to get in close, or would I be better off backing up to really think about, okay, well, I'm really happy with this now, and then click and taking that picture? It's just an idea, because one thing that I'm really aware of is I really love photography, and I quite like photo editing as well. But what I don't like doing is going through 50 shots that are almost the same, where I've sort of been clicking away thinking, right, I'm going to capture this perfectly, but because I haven't taken the time to really check my composition or the exposure before I shoot, a lot of them are, I could have just not bothered taking them. So maybe think about that for next time. One shot photography. I didn't get any questions for the website or the podcast this week, but I'd just like to say again that if you've got any pics you'd like to submit for me to have a look at and play with on the photo workbench, that you'd like to see a little tutorial on the blog, just say so. Just say, I don't know, even if you wanted me to do some editing using say Picnic or Picasa, I could have a go with that. Just email me the pictures. Again, no recommendations this week because I haven't got that much time, and I've got to go and pick my daughter up from shopping soon. Or no, I think she's getting the bus home. No, she's getting the bus home. That's it. But I've got a few things. I'll tell you what happened. We've got I mean, we've got a small house with a small garden. I mean, in England generally, unless you've got lots and lots of money, and if you live in the town, you have small houses. But what we try and do in our garden, we try and cram in as much as possible. So we've got a nice large 10-foot sort of paddling pool, and we've got a trampoline and everything like that. And the weather's been really hot over the last few days, really hot. And of course, we had a bit of a water fight yesterday, and so the kids were in the pool. So I had to get the super soaker and go to the tap and fill it up with freezing cold water, and I zapped them, and they grabbed me and threw me in the pool, and then they went on the trampoline, so I got the super soaker again and got them again, and I just the garden's a mess. There's towels everywhere, there's clothes everywhere, there's water everywhere, the kitchen floor got soaked, so I've got a lot of tidying up I need to do today. So that's why I'm not going to be doing any recommendations. But one thing I'd like to do as well is, if you've come across a podcast or a site or somebody's photo stream on Flickr, or a group that you're involved with on Flickr, and you think, oh yeah, this is really cool, email me, scalespeeder@gmail.com, and I'll use it. I'll put it in the recommendations as well. Our monthly assignment, which was time, is drawing to a close. Time's almost up. And we need to think about a new one now. So, if you've got any ideas, go over to the Flickr forum and start a new thread and say, how about what we're going to do for August, and come up with a few ideas, and maybe we can decide amongst ourselves what we'd like to do. The technique challenge is still open, which is the no sky landscapes. But I don't want people to think that it's got to be like a traditional landscape that's just been tilted down. Go in close if you want to. I mean, what I've done at the moment, I've done one with a boat in some sea, which is quite a large sort of area, I guess. And then I've submitted the one which is the stones in the pond, which is pretty close. It's not by no means a big landscape. So I know if you're a bit worried that you live somewhere flat or something like that, go for a detail shot, as long as it's pointing downwards and doesn't have any sky in it. That's cool. The other idea I had was, I think it's really important that we do the assignments every month. And when I first started doing came up with the idea of doing a technique challenge. I've put a time limit. I've said a month, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to change that, and I'm going to say, for the technique challenges like the No Sky Challenge, we're going to leave them open. They're never going to shut. I mean, once you've submitted your 3 photos and you're happy, you've sort of absorbed the idea of taking pictures like that, and they become part of your repertoire, if you like, of photography. We're going to leave them open so that new people who join the Flickr forum or listen to the podcast or read the blog and catch up on things, they can have a go at the technique challenges as they go along. And so what I'm going to do is issue a new technique challenge every week. Well, sorry, let me qualify that. I'm going to issue a new technique challenge with every podcast. Hopefully the podcasts are going to come out every week on a Monday or Tuesday. Obviously when I'm on holiday and things like that, they won't be. And I'd like the technique challenge, which I'll put on the Flickr website soon, this time, to be the sort of title to be Fill the Frame. Fill the frame. So that's FILL, not PHILL. So the idea is that next time you're out shooting, think about when you're going to take a photograph with a subject. Think about making that subject really large in the frame. Maybe still follow rules of composition, but whatever subject it is, make it large so that it's really impactful. I saw it on a video on the web. This guy was talking about it, and I thought, yeah, well, brilliant idea. So, new technique challenge, fill the frame, and it'll be open-ended. You do it now, do it in 6 months' time. It will always be on there. Right, well, that's it for today. Remember to think about some new assignment ideas and put them on the Flickr forum. Any questions or comments or suggestions for the blog or the podcast, please, you can either submit them on a Flickr thread or come on over to www.robnunphoto.com and send me an email. and you know, anything at all, any questions at all, just send them in, or things that you think could be done better or could be done differently. If you haven't already, please join the Flickr group and submit some pics to the group pool. Thanks to Everyday Jones for the intro and outro. Thanks for everybody for listening and downloading the podcast. Oh, actually, I've got one more thing. I've got a bit of a preview for next week. I almost forgot it as well. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it is, what I'm going to be talking about next week, but you're going to have to listen really carefully, and maybe that'll give you an idea about what I'm going to talk about. I'm not really going to say any more, so here we go. So listen to this and see what it says to you. Okay, hopefully you heard that. Okay, so that's it. I'll be seeing you on Flickr.